And plot 17 is Rural Design Limited.
The original competition for the Highland Housing Fair for us, coming from Skye, was a chance to express lots of kind of pent-up anxieties about what's happening with housing in the Highlands. And we tried to condense all these thoughts into one little plot in Inverness. But the difference in Skye, we're used to a house in amongst a much wider landscape rather than a house in amongst a little suburban plot. Now, our way of dealing with that was to focus on the garden and turn the house in the way and try and put within the garden space all of these things that we get in Skye. So there's a landscape, which is about amenity space and about growing things. So there's vegetable plot here, there's going to be polytunnels in the future, and it became a little like a walled garden that you might get in some of the Skye buildings. So that was the main link. So actually we've turned the house towards the garden. So all the spaces, all the bedrooms, all the living rooms, kitchen obviously, a dining space, all look into the garden rather than out at everybody else's houses. Yeah, when you do go up the house, there's a lovely big window at the top that gives you a great view over the wider landscape. So you have your own little landscape and then the connection with the distant one. So working from that, we also are terribly upset by all the identikit houses that you get in Skye, which start to destroy the landscape. So in one sense, we wanted to work with the sloping site. So our house actually steps down the sloping site and has a variety of spaces because of that. So you have tall spaces, you have low spaces, rather than sandwich type house with ceilings all at the same height and things like that. And then the materials in the house are trying to make that connection to the landscape as well. So there's a lot of use of timber. Scottish larch on the outside, also Scottish larch on the inside, on the floor and on the walls. And the details are all timber and natural materials, just trying to make that connection and try and avoid too many kind of alien forms. It's also very low tech, which this isn't a kind of criticism of the builders, but we're used to having a limited palette of materials, having joiners that can build things and not necessarily having the fancy suppliers of stainless steel bits or glass or whatever. So it's quite simply detailed. Everything's quite straight and quite square, just using the joiner skills to the best of their abilities. There's a kind of fine balance with sustainability. You know, you can go for the bells and whistles approach, you can go for lots of insulation, you can go for solar panels, you can go for all sorts of things, but at the end of the day it's actually too much. So for us it's a balanced approach, which is concentrating on insulation first of all. The walls there are about 350mm thick, full of insulation, so the heat loss is very low. So the actual heat input for the house is primarily, for most of the year, is going to be through solar gain. There's a big panel of glazing in the roof there that will draw a lot of light down into the house, and that'll circulate through the house. And for certain parts of the year, it'll only need to use its heating, let's say in December, January, February. And so we haven't spent a lot of money on a fancy heating system. We're just connecting to the gas that's here, but we're going to use very little of it, and that's the main principle. Because at the end of the day, the house needs to be affordable for somebody to buy. The interiors, they're simple, basically simple walls, and what we've concentrated on is the shape of the space and its internal connections. So for example, you walk into the house and you open the door and there's a Caithness slab that will connect right out into the garden, draw your attention to the garden right away. So you have this palette of materials. The highly trafficked part of the entrance is Caithness and goes right through the house. Then you have larch, you have white walls, simply detailed, and then it's about volume, it's about playing with height. I don't know if you've noticed the way the light comes in through that roof light is just beautiful, and it's that animates the house and creates all the interest you need rather than fancy wallpapers or anything like that. The cost of this to build This is not thinking of land cost and fees and all these things. It was about 200,000, I think, and it's quite expensive for a kind of a one-off house. But I think if you got into repetition and you weren't reinventing the wheel every time, then we'd certainly love to see a series of these houses together. But I think there is an important thing, and this comes from Skye as well. Suburbia has to be more than identikit houses, and the great thing about this is the variety and the capacity for personalisation. The one missing thing we've had here is a client. You know, we've had to act as client, and so we're putting all our own thoughts in there. But usually working with a client is a great opportunity for enhancing a development, because you can fine-tune it to their particular requirements really closely. So that's what we tend to do day in, day out. In Skye, perhaps about 5 or 10% of the people who are building a house are interested in a sustainable contemporary design. And I think part of the problem is they haven't had their eyes open to the possibilities of modern design. And by coming here, I think people will hopefully get so encouraged to go off and do it themselves elsewhere, whether it's us as architects, whether it's somebody else. I think what we want, all in all, is just better housing in the Scottish landscape, and this can do no harm in that.